So I was recently asked, Arial, can we get a Game Ground tier list video? And to be honest, I love the idea of, well, ranking things in Game Ground, you know. I could do the levels, the worlds, the music, the bosses, the versions and releases of the game. Everything had its own merits. But above all else, the one with the highest potential had to be the characters. With 20 of them in total, each with unique design, mechanics, and use case scenarios, it was a great idea. Unfortunately, I had already done a tier list in my first ever community post. Oops. But the idea of going over every Game Ground character in depth was something that I had been interested in for some time, but was debating whether or not to do a series of 20 small videos or one big video. Now that I had the base behind how a 20 character video would be framed, I could mark each character's tier at the end of their segments and even divide their ratings into favoritism and meta viability while I was at it. And this video would also cover everything about the characters: designs, alternate canon and or fan-made nicknames, attacks, in-game utility, but most important of all, I wanted to cover the history of these characters, how they evolved over the course of the series. I mean, look at General. His attacks and mechanics changed entirely between the Genesis and arcade versions. And in the Sega Master System version, he's still just as terrible as he always is. But he has a female version. That's something new. So of course I was going to be making this character discussing Supercut, so I'd need to put together all the information that was out there from every canon source. And for a few brief moments, I thought it'd be easy. And then I remembered the harsh truth. I couldn't do that. Yes, I could technically still make the video, but pulling information from every canon source would be impossible. The video would therefore be incomplete. It would be lacking key information in several areas, and there was nothing I could do about it. I, the master of Game Ground, would be incapable of making a comprehensive summary of all the facts, simply because the facts have been lost to time. And they will remain lost to time, unless something is done about it. That's why I'm here. I'm finally doing something about it. Or at a minimum, I'm doing my part and hoping that others will band together to help us do the rest. So I'm sorry, this video isn't the tier list. Not yet. Maybe soon, but not yet. This is far more important than any tier list. I have to get this out of the way first before I do anything like that. This is the story of a game that none of you have ever played, that none of you have ever seen, that none of you have ever heard of, and most likely who have never conceived as possible for a franchise as obscure as Game Ground. This is the story of how I discovered Game Ground again. The year is 2019, November specifically. Pre-pandemic, I was still in the midst of college. It was a rather difficult semester to say the least. Semi-uneven distribution of credits had led to a massive stress in my life. And despite that, I still found time to goof off, most notably mid-class. Yep, what a responsible student I was, sitting there with my computer open, half of me paying attention to the class, and the other half still learning that this guy doesn't run down the hallway unless you're standing in a very specific spot. And since wizards don't appear until he's dead, you can mess around with him for as long as you like. Yep, 2019 Arial had been playing for years and thought he knew everything about Game Ground. Well, as evidenced by many numerous videos, I clearly didn't. Oh yes, I was going to be proven wrong. It was only a matter of time until the day came. And that day was November 12th, 2019. At about exactly 4 p.m. actually. Sometime earlier that day, likely, again, in the middle of a class, I was searching for Game Ground related things. I imagined it was something along the lines of character sprite rips. And in the process, I came across this strange image, which I didn't fully recognize at first as Game Ground related stuff. And then I realized, it's my boy, Zaemon! Look at him, he's got the little tornado symbol near his weapon descriptions. Now, of course, I've been throwing tornadoes at tanks for 2 to 3 years by this point, even at some of the other bosses if I got bored. So naturally, Zaemon was my favorite, and seeing him in what looked like a full-blown character profile piqued my interest. So I followed the link through to the full page to see where the image sourced from. The page was very old. It dated back to April 26, 2010, and some of the images on the site didn't load properly, even with a refresh. But clicking on them still gave me a full-size render, usually. The page read as follows. Do you guys remember Game Ground? It's that one game that Sega keeps putting in those Genesis Mega Drive compilations, and you ask yourself why they do it. Well, now they are making a new entry to the franchise, mobile only and in Japan. Guess the title, Gain Ground Again. This game comes out today, or yesterday, I don't know the date in Japan. Gain Ground Again lets you team up with other users, much like the older counterpart. We have screens of the game below, not too impressive graphically. This genuinely surprised me. Gain Ground on mobile phones? And the screenshot didn't look like the graphical style of any Gain Ground version I knew of. The arcade, Genesis, and PC engine all had similar graphic styles for the characters' profiles and enemies. The Master System had easily identifiable 8-bit graphics and music with exit buddies as square symbols on the field instead of little pawns, and the PS2 version had that unmistakably low-poly 3D style, viewed isometrically, unlike anything seen before. But this was different. The character profiles alone were made unlike any style before, with detail and soul. Sure, the PS2 had full-body character renders, but just look at the detail in Zaemon's armor. It's insane. And you're telling me that this is for a Japanese mobile game released 10 years ago? And then I came to the realization, wouldn't that make this game 10 years old? And despite my frequent Gain Ground research, I had never even heard of this before. How could I have missed something like a mobile phone platform release? And this blog isn't even an official Sega site for that matter. Can I even verify that this is a real game and not some fan project or worse, just a spoof post? So I got to work. I began translating the image I had. Back then, Google reverse image searching didn't have image scanning and translating, or if it did, I was too stupid to realize it. A lot of work had to be done to extract the text manually, but eventually I prevailed. I made a small document to insert all my work so I could keep track of what each line of the image translated to, and the text confirmed a few things, that Zaemon was indeed a real samurai, but it also mentioned he has a connection with Gain Ground in past battles. What past battles? The system only ever went berserk the one time, and every version of the game is just a retelling of those events. Why would someone trapped in a rogue Gain Ground system have memories of past battles fighting to defeat the Gain Ground system if this was the first time anything of the sort had happened? Or was this in reference to him being sent in as a part of a rescue team, only to be captured? I couldn't tell. So I decided to set the Zaemon picture aside and search a bit more thoroughly for the rest of the game itself. I didn't know its Japanese title, which was unfortunate, given that it was likely exclusively to be covered in its native language. Thankfully, due to the one JPEG surviving the blog post, I had the game's English name. Not that it was much help. Let me tell you, searching Gain Ground is hard enough for Google to understand as it is, and now I'm telling it to add a word as common as again to the query? Unsurprisingly, it derailed the searches even further away from Sega content. And thus, some questions remain unanswered. I had to accept that they will remain unanswered for the time being. For the next 3 years, I'd search on and off for evidence that this game was real with no success. And thus, the profile of Zaemon floated to the back of my computer's storage, with no hope of ever being brought back into the limelight. December 15th, 2022, 3:45 p.m. Over 3 years later, a lot had changed. I had a year-old YouTube channel, I had graduated from college, I had the speedrun world records in my favorite game of all time, discovering glitches and bugs that I never thought possible, and was the de facto Gain Ground scientist on the internet. Not that anyone needed that, but I was happy to provide because I truly love this game with all my heart. I don't remember why I started searching for Gain Ground again, but I did. I think what had happened was that the website I had been using for image translating went down, and I ended up discovering that Google had finally built the functionality into their reverse image searcher. And of course, the reverse image search popped up that old logo again, re-sparking my interest. So I did another search, yet again for the name Gain Ground Again. I didn't expect much to come up, but something did come up. A website called Sega Retro had a result for a game of the same name. A singular, pitiful result, but a result nonetheless. Sure enough, it had that same logo from the blog post, and a few references to what platform the mobile devices it was on. The articles way back by Sega Retro were those of real Sega websites from 2010. I had proof the game was real, but most important of all, I had something far more valuable given the game's region locking. I had the game's Japanese name. I immediately searched the Japanese name. I got a result nearly instantly, right at the top of the list. A YouTube video of gameplay uploaded on June of 2021. and I knew it was the right game because the logo on the game's title menu was the same as the one from the blog and from the Sega Retro page. Further searches led me down other rabbit holes. I searched around for ways to play the game myself, even searching for the 2 phone platforms that it was available on, iMode and Yahoo Keitai. I apologize if I'm brutally mispronouncing either of those. And that, finally, caused me to happen upon the one Twitter account which could change everything. The one and only Samuel Menzner. Again, apologies if I'm mispronouncing that as well. Turns out Samuel knew the name of the person in charge of the channel that was hosting the Game Ground Again video. They mentioned the name Ruaga in their tweet, and upon double checking, the link Sam provided did lead to the channel which uploaded the Game Ground Again video. Along with tons of other arcade gameplay of other Japanese exclusive mobile games, as I quickly realized. Sam's Twitter informed me that he was into game preservation and translation. I wanted to see if there was any specific information on his tweets that could direct me to a copy of Game Ground Again, so I scrolled through his older messages. Slowly, I began to get the impression that this task would be monumentally difficult. Sam's tweet implied that Japanese mobile games were in danger, or more accurately, that they had been in danger for some time, specifically since November of 2021. It was then that I finally encountered one of Sam's tweets where he cross-promoted a Did You Know Gaming video for which he provided reference for. Sadly, the video was not the bearer of good news. Phone carriers for the phones that could run Game Ground Again had stopped selling new carrier packages as of September 2019. On top of that, you had to be in Japan and specifically on a Japanese carrier service in order to download the games onto your phone in the first place. Thankfully, customers with phone packages purchased before the shutdown would still receive service, but it still meant you couldn't just buy a new phone and download any old game you wanted nowadays. But the news only got worse. In that magical month of November 2021, the iMode market which was providing those Japanese mobile games closed down, meaning that there would be no way to attain copies of those games after that date. And then finally, to put the last nail in the coffin, the Puyo Puyo Sega distribution portal, which was hosting the Game Ground Again for both iMode and Yahoo Keitai, was shut down itself in March of 2022. Much was done in those final days to save as many games as possible, but nowadays, if something was lost, it's lost for good. Yeah, it turns out that bare-bones Sega Retro article I found was made only 5 days before the November 2021 shutdown. No wonder I didn't find any results back in 2019. No one even knew it was a problem yet. Or anyone who didn't have enough voice. So here's what the situation had boiled down to. Until someone invents time travel, the only way for anyone to play Game Ground Again would be to have a Japanese mobile device with the app loaded into it from before the market shutdowns. And since it's a region-exclusive game, the only way one of us in the West will get a chance to play it would be to buy ancient phones off of online auctions for not-so-cheap prices, and play the lottery in hoping that the game we wanted was even loaded on there. Needless to say, that ain't happening anytime soon. Not for me, at least. But of course, this was a full year ago. Surely things had changed, right? There was a great effort to catalog and preserve the mobile games at the time of their imminent doom. Surely there was a chance that the situation had improved since then. So one night, I sent a DM to Samuel Menzer in the late AM hours, making it technically the 18th of December 2022, and awaited a response. Surprisingly, or perhaps unsurprisingly given the time zone difference between the two of us, he responded right away, and was happy that I was enthusiastic about Japanese mobile games. Unfortunately, he also confirmed that literally nothing had changed in the past year. But optimistic old me wouldn't let that deter my hopes, so I kept searching for Game Ground Again in some other form, on and off, for about a month, only to finally accept that I'd likely never find it, and even if I did, I'd have no way to emulate or record it. But I still had Ruaga's video. Ruaga, unfortunately, isn't interested in dumping anything online for us due to Japanese law. Honestly, I'm fine with that. I respect their decision. Other than potentially the Game Preservation Society, no other person on the internet, to my knowledge, has this game. Clearly, anyone who does hasn't spoken up about it yet. So Ruaga's gameplay is all that we've got. So I decided to do what I could with what I had. I downloaded the video and began taking screenshots and uploaded them to Google's new reverse image searcher, which, as I mentioned before, now came with built-in text scanning and translation functionality. And that's exactly what I've been doing for the past 5 months, translating whenever I have the motivation and or free time between videos. I've unprofessionally translated every unique frame of Japanese text from the one video we have of it. A link to my full documentation is in the description below, so why not check it out after this video is done. But don't leave just yet. Before you get into that document, I should tell you what makes this game so special. After all, I spent so much time building up the hype, didn't I? So, what's so unique about this game? Well, where do I start? I know. How about the story? Remember what I said earlier about Zaemon having fought in the game ground system in the past? Well, that's because this game isn't a remake. It's a sequel. Having translated the original opening title crawl, I've learned that this game takes place chronologically right after the original versions do, and that the system has gone berserk yet again. This time, warriors old and new must work together to shut the system down from the inside, just like how they did the last time. Yeah, it's a lazy excuse for a sequel plot, but hey, it's Gain Ground. The excuse plot was always just there so that firing plasma cannons at helpless barbarians made some kind of sense. What else? Well... I know! Does anyone remember what happens when you get hit by an attack in Gain Ground? If you don't, that's okay. Here's a little reminder for you. Okay, good. Got that? Now, here's what happens in Gain Ground again when we do the same thing. That's right, your characters now have HP. And you might think, wowee, that's cool, but isn't it OP to have a massive party of characters who all take multiple hits to defeat and can easily be revived by carrying them to the exit? And that's where you'd be wrong, because I left out a crucial detail. When your HP drops to 0, your character dies. And it's not like that kind of death in the original Game Grounds where they become a little hostage statue that you can pick up. No, they're just gone.
Reduced to atoms.
Mega Man style, if you would. If you lose a character, you can't get them back for the rest of your run. But don't worry, this game still has exit buddies. You can pick up the hostages and carry them to the exit, and they're not added to your party? Okay, trust me here, there's a reason this game is amazing. This Game Ground game breaks all formulas of the traditional Game Ground live system. In all other versions of Game Ground, the meta is as follows. Each character is both a weapon and a life, and you need to collect as many as you can so you can always pick the right tool for the job. Or in the case that you lose one of your lives, have backup options to either rescue them or to do without. In Game Ground again, however, party management is the central focus in nearly an opposite manner. At the start of every world, every epoch, if you will, you get to select 3 characters from the list of characters that you own. These 3 characters are the only characters you have for the next 10 levels, and have to get you through the world on their own. At any time, the player can hold down a button to switch which character is their active one, allowing players to choose the right tool for the job reactively instead of proactively. To compensate for this, they added the aforementioned mechanic of characters having HP, in addition to having it so that any one touch of the exit ends the level entirely, since all of the characters are represented by just the one avatar you're moving around. And as a cost of having the party being restricted to just the 3 characters you selected at the beginning of the world, hostages don't get added to your party, and are instead just added to a list of characters you own that you can then pick from the next time you start a new world. In this way, Game Ground Again manages to solve one of the franchise's largest underlying beginner player issues. The commonplace problem of new players unlocking a new character, testing them out in a stage for the first time, and then dying because they don't understand their mechanics, or picked a horrible weapon for the stage at hand, often not learning anything in the process, making their death entirely pointless.
Big mouse
Is that
armor?
RoboCop? What the fuck is
Yeah,
going on here?
RoboCop.
Well, that sucks. Okay.
RoboCop, you're so dead.
Oh my god. Fucking wizarobes.
Goddamn.
In Game Ground Again, meanwhile, the player is informed of everything their character can do before they start a world, from the moment they select their team. And in having hostages that are rescued be added to an external list of options which the player can only view outside of the standard play session, and not immediately adding them to the player's party, it removes the ability for the player to immediately test out their new weapons on the next stage out of curiosity, essentially eliminating the problem of them experimenting with what they were just given and losing it instantly to no fault of their own entirely. Hey y'all, postscript interjecting Arial here, but I managed to realize while editing the previous clip that on top of fixing that issue with Game Ground Again manages to solve the franchise's other underlying beginner issue. If you'd please demonstrate, D-pad.
Get to this side. Nope. Okay. And in most
for a
games,
run.
it wouldn't make a difference, but in this one, when that brings up a menu, that's like kind of a pain in the ass. Yeah, my other guys are gone.
You rescued her, but I guess it didn't count.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised by that, actually.
Yeah, most players who play Gain Ground don't figure out how the hostage system works right away.
Yeah, left 2, out 2 until I jumped in. So yeah, we're collecting dudes with that. Okay.
But once they find out there's more than 3 characters in the game,
What the fuck is that? What?
their minds get blown.
When did this happen?
When did you pick up this guy?
And then they realize the true depth of the game.
You pick up a guy that you need to deal with each level, maybe?
Maybe. Right.
Beautiful. Well, I mean, you're back up to 4 lives now, though.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting mechanic for it. They all seem to be different folks, adding different people
really
to your repertoire.
very wide variety of party characters. Let's check out this guy.
So how does Gain Ground again approach this issue? Well, you can access anyone in your party at any time, but you can't add new people to it mid-world. Which sounds bad, but it also means there's no immediate punishment for missing hostages. And while you might think that's a bit counterintuitive since we want to teach people about the hostage system, it is counterbalanced by the team building process itself. For on the party selection screen, you can see a giant list of empty slots. This implants the idea of there being characters to unlock into your mind, preparing you to expect the mechanic of hostage saving later on, even if you don't know how it works yet, without the need for a game manual, which in turn causes you to notice the second hint, hidden at the end of level screen. In any stage with a hostage, this indication here tells you which hostage you just rescued. Or it tells you if you missed the hostage that was in the stage if there was one. This is the first time in Gain Ground history that a player is told that they failed to rescue a hostage in a level, or that hostage rescuing was even a thing in the first place. This will cause you to actively seek out what causes a hostage to be considered rescued, and keep trying until you get it right. And to aid you in your quest of trying levels again and again to get all the characters, the game has another tool to help you out. A partial level select system. Once you've unlocked a world, it's available for play whenever you want. Just assemble a new trio and go on in. That way, you can re-rescue hostages you missed the first time around, or get perfect 100% completion scores on stages you took the exit on, be it because you rescued a hostage the last time you went through, or because you didn't have anyone to finish off the level for you, such as if you didn't have any high ground characters left alive when you reached a later stage. Some levels even appear to have exclusive paths, most notably this one in 1-6, which I think is a door that only opens if you can light this torch with fire, perhaps like that of Fire Knight's weapon? Which leads me into what is perhaps the whole point of the intro being about ranking the characters. This game's character roster. You think it might just be a simple matter with the 20 characters from the original game. Well, you'd be wrong. We've got 25 characters this time around, and many of the returning cast have different weapon sets entirely. Take Betty, for example. You remember Betty, right? One of the starter 3. She's got her pistol and grenades, a classic loadout. Not a useful one, but it's very recognizable. Well, in Gain Ground again, she takes a page out of Professor's book. She now wields dual pistols, which she can fire in the direction she's looking for decent burst damage, or one on each side to hit 2 enemies at once. But Arial, you say, I want to blow people up with grenades. Well, don't worry. That's what one of the new characters is for. Meet Norman. He's got a grenade launcher. He's also one of your first starting characters, and your default high ground hitter for your first playthrough. And remember how we mentioned character HP was a thing? Well, meet Ada, your third starter character. Her primary weapon deals very little damage and stuns enemies, but her secondary weapon is a medkit that can be used to heal the entire party once per stage. And those characters are just the tip of the iceberg. I don't want to spoil too much of my translation document secrets, but let's just say that one of the Master System characters gets a nice cameo, as do mentions of Fire Knight and Water Knight existing. And Stonehead. Freaking Stonehead, man! I mean, I always know I made fun of the Magic Knights for holding swords in their profile images and never using them, but damn, you didn't have to take my advice and create a dedicated melee unit. What's more, as you may have noticed, the character select screens have large paragraphs of text on them. These are in fact not descriptions of how to play the character, but descriptions of the characters themselves. They confirm things like the fact that the Betty we are currently playing as is the same Betty from the original game, or how Norman has a friend that's been captured in the Gain Ground system that we'll be rescuing later on. Who that is, I'm not certain, but I'd love to find out someday. But if to you that was just lore dumping and not character building, I understand. In that case, may I direct you to this, the end of level quips. You see, every time a character beats a level, you get a short quip from them, showcasing a tidbit of their personality. and this quote changes based on whether you beat the level by taking the exit, saving a hostage, or killing all the enemies. Sadly, we don't have many of these quotes given the lack of footage. And that goes for the rest of the game's lore as well. The majority of characters remain to be unlocked by the end of Ruaga's playthrough. Sadly, that's all there probably ever will be. But I like to remain optimistic. Maybe if this video reaches Ruaga, they'll record more gameplay for us. But until then, that's all there is. And that's all there ever will be. I find it somewhat ironic. Gain Ground Again is a game about reworking the formula of the original series of the Gain Ground games. And in plot, it acts as the narrative sequel of the originals, even though the plot is the same in the end. But let's be honest, we all know what happens when the player makes it to the end of Gain Ground. They hear that beautiful song, The Door of Space-Time, and the system shuts down. But no matter how many times it shuts down, something restarts it again. A new remake, a new port. And sometimes they manage to do a little bit of both. Or neither. And now Gain Ground Again is that very concept in a meta sense. The story retold, the Berserk system that shuts down always turns back on. All it takes is one fan, one player, to sit down and hit start. But that's what's different this time around. Every Gain Ground release up to this point has begun the game by saying, push start, or press start. Ignore SX's push run, I don't know what that's about. But Gain Ground Again makes it very clear from the moment you step into the menu. This isn't the old game. Not anymore. This is a new game. And I hope someday we get to see the whole thing for ourselves. Which is why now I feel the need to make the call to action. Maybe not to you specifically, dear viewer, but to anyone out there who owns the game, or to anyone who knows someone that exists who owns the game, to that individual. We need that lore. Or well, I'll be honest about my selfishness here, I need that lore. But I'm not asking for anyone to dump the game. Sure, it'd be nice if we could distribute the game to others. It'd certainly be nice, but that's not what I'm asking for. I'm not asking for anyone to dump or distribute the game illegally, nor am I even asking you to sell your phone online so that others can do it for us. I'm asking you to do something far more important. I want you to help preserve the legacy of Gain Ground Again. Plug your phone into a capture card. Play the game. Get good at the game. Beat the game. Unlock all the characters. Upload your footage and screenshots online for the rest of us to see for the first time ever. I know, it's hard. It's Gain Ground. It's a monumental task to get good at any version of it. I should know. It took me over 10 years of semi-regular play before I first beat it legitimately, and it still finds ways to surprise me. And that's just the Genesis version. I'd be asking you to plunge into a new set of levels, untested by nearly anyone else, so that the rest of the world could see what it all culminates to. But please, if you know what that game is, you have the chance to assure that Ruaga's mere 33 minutes and 18 seconds of content aren't all that there ever will be. Let me tell you a story. Long ago, back in 2018, I received a gift. My brother, who knew I always wanted to play two-player Gain Ground as a kid, but never could due to the limitations of our radical plug-and-play, decided to buy me a version of Gain Ground that had two-player compatibility. And in addition to that, what he bought also came with dozens of other Sega Genesis classics for us to play. Mean Bean Machine, the Golden Axe Trilogy, Mortal Kombat's 1 through 3, Godnos? He bought me an AtGames Classic Console 2014. Hey, I was grateful. I'd never played Gain Ground with two players before. And after hearing that god-awful sound chip, I never did again. Here's a quick comparison for you if you ever want a reason not to buy from AtGames. But aside from the audio, it functioned as advertised, so we kept it. We even still play Mean Bean Machine in the basement from time to time. but after needing to use it for a video regarding the console verification of a Game Ground Infinite score glitch, I realized something. Something very important. In the 9 years since the AtGames Classic Console 2014 came out, the only examples I'd ever seen of music as heard on AtGame consoles were that of classic Sonic games. So what if you had never heard a Sonic game before? What if you grew up on something else? Would you even know the difference? So I decided to upload the Game Ground OST as heard on AtGames. And then I opened the floor to requests, offering to host any person's favorite OST on my channel as heard on AtGames. And I thought, maybe I'd get a request or two for some Genesis games I had never played before. But the strangest thing happens when you're the only person on the internet able to make a certain type of content. You see, whether or not there was demand before I posted my initial AtGames Game Ground OST, the demand would manifest itself after I put the option out there, and the requesters were drawn in automatically. Now the AtGames content is some of the top viewed stuff on my channel. The point of my story being this: I had something that not many people had. I had the source, the know-how, and the free time to put in the effort. I had the ability to provide something that most people wouldn't be able to experience elsewise. Who else could ever find videos of AtGames mutilating the very definition of music if I hadn't started uploading them? It had been 9 years, and only now are there full OST videos of AtGames sound chip being produced by some random guy on the internet? Hey guys, interjecting Arial here. 15 minutes after figuring out this information, turns out someone else has uploaded AtGames OSTs recently. Most notably The Lion King, a game that I was unable to record. So it's nice to know that I'm not the only one out there. And that's exactly what's happening here. Anyone with Game Ground Again is like me with the AtGames console. Probability-wise, someone out there other than Ruraga still has Game Ground Again on their phone. If you are that someone, know that you have the potential to show that game to the world. To everyone unfortunate enough to be unable to experience it. It is not your job to distribute or to dump or to even sell it if you don't feel like it. But it is your responsibility to pass that legacy on in some way. If you don't do it, who will? Because, let me tell you, I can't do it. Not alone, at least. So if you have the game, give it a go, for the rest of us. We'd love to see what the game has to offer. And that goes for anything. Older, lesser-known games that were favorites of yours long ago that might now be forgotten to time. Downloaded copies of privated or unlisted videos that people might still be looking for out there.
I'm sorry to disappoint you, Yugi. You've activated my trap card. Computer science and data compression.
Even something as silly as a webcomic that you've been following for years that you still hope will come back someday. Whether or not you care about it, someone else out there does. And only when you speak up about it, promote it, and display it for others to see, will you realize how important it truly is. That's what Game Ground is to me. That's what this channel is about, what it's always been about. Showing off those tiny, obscure things in life that make me happy so that I can share that joy with others in hopes that even one person will find it, and it'll affect their life just as much as it affected mine. Until then, I guess I'll make my characters video without the added lore that the full roster of Game Ground Again bio pages would provide. Then again, if someone out there wants to send me pictures of all 25 bios before then, I'd gladly showcase them. So thanks for watching. Big shoutouts to Ruraga for providing the gameplay footage and basically proving that the game exists in the first place. And extra shoutouts to Samuel Menzner, who has been very helpful in finding my way through this tragic mess of a subject. Also, translation document, don't forget about it. I literally translated every frame of unique Japanese text from Ruraga's video there. So check that out if you're interested in dissecting the lore, or if you just want to see Valkyrie with wing ears for some reason. I don't know. You do you, girl. I'm gonna pick my boy Zaemon either way. Thanks for watching, everyone. Until next time.